The 19th century photography captures life on the American frontier. Women who worked in brothels, photographed in their rooms, stare firmly into the camera. Between simple walls and direct gazes, each portrait suggests stories of desire, survival, and silent negotiations that still echo in collective memory. In Death Valley in the 1870s, borax transport gains new momentum with wagons pulled by 20 mules. Long lines cut across the Great Basin, moving at a calculated pace. The harshness of the journey shapes a system in which animal strength, simple technique, and attentive command ensure the crossing of the scorching desert. In the image, Black Elk appears on the left as both witness and protagonist of turbulent times. In 1876, he takes part in the Battle of Little Bighorn, when United States troops faced several Great Plains nations. His path connects the portrait to the history of indigenous resistance on the continent and its contradictions. Quanah Parker, son of Cynthia Ann Parker, grows up between worlds after his mother is captured as a girl and lives among the Comanche. When buffalo hunters invade the plains, he takes on leadership, builds alliances, and organizes resistance to defend land and culture in the face of the United States expansion. In a 19th century portrait, two sex workers pose in a decorated room of a brothel in Miles, Montana. At the time, a district judge described the small town as chaotic, with loose morals. The photograph records the contrast between the room's shine and a community barely able to sustain its own rule of law. In the photo, a cowboy from Caldwell, Kansas, embodies the work that gave rise to the clothes themselves. Hat, boots, and belt aren't decoration. They face harsh sun, dust, and long hours in the saddle. Depending on the terrain and weather, he puts chaps over his pants to protect his legs, revealing the tough day-to-day life of working out in the open. This image is considered the last portrait of George Armstrong Custer. Vain and restless about his own appearance, he made the camera an ally and posed more than 150 times. This picture, taken 2 months before the Battle of Little Bighorn, comes just before a turning point in United States history in 1876. With the decline of the daguerreotype, the ambrotype gained ground, an image created on a glass plate, more accessible in the 1850s. The portrait shows a man whose name is unknown. Still, his gaze and restrained posture make the scene a striking record of the American West, a trace of the frontier in a time of change. In Greenwood, Kansas, the road slows at noon. Emigrants gather by the wagon and share the meal that keeps them going. Among simple pots and quick conversation, the road takes a breath. Soon the wagon moves on, carrying those looking for new opportunities and land to write their own future. Joella Irwin opened space for cowgirls in the early 20th century. In rodeos dominated by men, she made women's presence a draw. She traveled through many arenas, competed in various events, and showed skill, courage, and rhythm. Her path joined tradition and change, inspiring new competitors to take center stage. Dated 1884, this cabinet card shows a scene on the San Carlos Reservation in Arizona. The photo is considered the first known image of Geronimo. A leader among the Apache, he lived across generations and, beyond his historical role, became a cultural reference, echoed in movies, books, and stories. And Jesse James ended up becoming the most recognizable face of the James Younger Gang. Leading robberies, he crossed the Old West and became a symbol of banditry. His fame grew with every hit, fueled by news that portrayed him as either a rebel or a villain. In 1882, he was betrayed at home and killed, and the legend took the place of the real man. A symbol of American frontier expansion, Kit Carson traveled paths that helped define the West. He started as a fur trapper, became an explorer, and built a reputation for endurance in the mountains. He later guided John Pathfinder Fremont on major expeditions, in a time when maps were still being made step by step. In the photo, around 1880, the people pictured remain uncertainly identified. Even so, researchers suggest the man standing might be John Kinney. Once low profile, he He gained notoriety in 1875 by leading a gang of thieves in southern New Mexico, which made his name known in the region and keeps the image mysterious. In 1899, Pearl Hart made her mark on Old West history by carrying out one of the last stagecoach robberies. The crime echoed beyond local borders. Her name spread across the country, and later her story appeared in Cosmopolitan magazine, boosting her fame and securing her place in the memory of that era, near the end of a chapter in time. At 15, Rose Dunn, known as Rose of Cimarron, entered Old West folklore. In 1895, in Ingalls in the Oklahoma Territory, she supposedly helped her fugitive boyfriend in the middle of a shootout between lawmen and outlaws, a gesture that, wrapped in conflicting accounts, turned the young girl into a lasting legend. From the battlefield to the wide pastures, Texas John Slaughter followed a path that helps tell the story of the West. A Texas Ranger veteran of the Civil War, he later turned to cattle ranching and built his final ranch near Douglas, Arizona, shown in a photograph from around 1885 that survives today. The life of Olive Oatman was marked by survival and reinvention. Captured while still young and taken to live with the Mojave, she adopted the tribe's customs and received on her chin a tattoo in blue cactus ink, a spiritual mark that, according to them, would help her soul find a safe passage after death and be recognized in the afterlife. The Texas Rangers emerged in the early 19th century, when Stephen Austin gathered armed men in 1823 to protect settlers on the frontier. Officially established in 1835, they became an elite force, patrolling remote regions, pursuing fugitives, and carrying out missions that enforced the law in a rapidly growing Texas. A previously anonymous photograph surfaced, showing a woman leading cattle in an unidentified landscape of the American West, possibly the head of a ranch. The picture came to light by chance when writer Mark Lee Gardner found it in an antique shop in Missouri, raising questions about her origin and fate. On the Old West frontier, the name Tiburcio Vasquez spread by word of mouth. A photo taken around 1865 preserved the face of a man who became a symbol of defiance against the law. For nearly 20 years, he moved through roads and towns in the midst of crimes, feeding the imagination around Hispanic outlaws and the controversy surrounding his fame. In the Old West, a cowboy's life wasn't just about cattle on the trails. Between one cattle drive and the next, many went to studios to have their faces captured in portraits. They posed with worn hats, scuffed boots, and holsters in full view, turning photography into a keepsake, proof of their trade, and a piece of the identity they carried. Bill Doolin, an outlaw in the Oklahoma Territory, made even more enemies when the reward for his capture increased. The stories of his robberies mobilized posses and trackers. In August 1896, the chase ended in a shootout. He was hit by about 20 bullets, cornered by U.S. Deputy Marshal Heck Thomas. During the funeral procession of Tom and Frank McClory and Billy Clanton, a sign rose with the phrase, "Murdered on the streets of Tombstone." It wasn't just a complaint, it was a reminder of the clash that wounded the town. In 1881, behind the OK Corral, a quick gunfight killed all three and sparked the myth that would guide the Old West for decades. Kate Rockwell, a stage performer, left her mark on the lives of Alaskan miners at the turn of the century. In crowded saloons, she mixed songs and dance steps, leading the audience from laughter to focused silence. The high point came when she appeared in Red Chiffon, a number that turned hard nights into spectacle and stayed with those who saw her. In the 1865 photo, Wild Bill Hickok appears without props or costumes. He's wearing the same clothes he used on the streets of the Old West. That detail shows how he preferred to be seen off stage and gives anyone looking closely a more faithful picture of his style and his choices at a time untouched by studio tricks. In 1876, when cattle herds were still crossing the plains, Bat Masterson and Wyatt Earp let themselves be photographed side by side in Dodge City, Kansas. The image records and at the same time solidifies the partnership of two lawmen trying to bring order to the frontier, linking the rise of the cattle trade to the emergence of lasting authority.